The English synth pop rock band Depeche Mode had a quite unique start. Reflecting on their 44-year career, the Basildon Boys are now a bigger live draw than ever before. They undeniably have some of the most dedicated fans in the business, and their concerts are renowned for their epic and passionate nature. However, at the outset, Depeche Mode's roots can be traced back to 1977, when Andrew Fletcher and Vince Clarke were part of a band named No Romance in China. Vince Clarke was the primary songwriter for Depeche Mode when they were known as Composition of Sound. Remarkably, he also provided vocals in the band's earliest formations. Martin Gore joined due to his possession of a new Moog synthesizer. Dave Gahan was discovered when he sang Bowie's Heroes at a jam session, and the rest, as they say, is history. It's easy to listen to their debut album Speak and Spell and Laugh. The synthesizers are dated, the lead singer sounds 10 years younger than he was, Gahan was 18 at the time, and the lyrics are nonsensical. Yet listen carefully, and you'll see why this album was so influential and important to the musical scene at the time. New Life kicks off in full after about 30 seconds. It's representative of most of the album in that it's energetic, youthful, upbeat, and still sounds ridiculously fresh after all these years. As mentioned earlier, the lyrics, "I stand still stepping on a shady street, and I watch that man to a stranger," make absolutely no sense at all. They were chosen for phonetic value only, syllables that just seem to fit the music. Meanwhile, Clarke's influences can clearly be heard at the end of the track when all members harmonize in a carbon copy of the end to the Beatles' Twist and Shout. I Sometimes Wish I Was Dead is even cheerier despite the name, with a twisted, springy synth sound after each chorus and upbeat tempo. Puppets may indeed be the first proper Mode track, though Gore didn't write it. It's a suitably downbeat look at addiction to drugs, yet with a catchy Clarke synth hook. Boys Say Go is quite anthemic and contains some good background synths exhibiting a touch of menace, as does No Disco, possibly titled in a reference to Vince's punk roots. The cheesiest campus track DM has ever made must be What's Your Name? It uses the words, "Hey, you're such a pretty boy, you're so pretty," as its main chorus. The harmonies are textbook Beach Boys, right down to the PRETTY hook. It might cheer you up if you need a good laugh, but it has to be said, it's one of the cheesiest Depeche Mode tracks ever. Photographic is like a classic Gary Newman track, with all the menace but none of the rigidity. This song flows very nicely and still sounds stark. It's followed by Martin Gore's first ever contributions, Tora Tora Tora, a great quirky song with cool synth effects at the end of each verse, and Big Muff, named after a guitar foot pedal, a rather funky instrumental. Any Second Now is a crystalline ballad with twinkly synths, yet still, it's nonsense in a lyrical sense. Pretty ineffective for all that, though. It's the first ever song with Gore on lead vocal, but the real climax of this album is Just Can't Get Enough. You shouldn't need me to introduce you to this one. Bubblegum pop in its purest form, it's constructed from deceptively multi-layered synths and bounces along nicely enough. As more than one reviewer has noted, it's so catchy, it's very close to annoying. Yet it's very much a record of its time. The unfortunate result, though, is that most people are unaware of how far the band have come since this naive but enjoyable track. This record, deriving many of its ideas from 60s harmonies and pop rock, in turn went on to influence a host of artists and musical styles throughout the 80s. No fan of the dark Depeche Mode could identify with much here, yet this album should be revered for what it is. It's a youthful, enthusiastic album, positively bouncing with energy, and explored a totally new attitude to producing music at the time. Vince was soon to leave, and the band would soon carve out their own identity, but Speak and Spell remains an album apart from the rest. Following Vince Clarke's departure from the band, Depeche Mode recruited musician and keyboardist Alan Wilder to replace him on tour. However, remaining members Martin Gore, Dave Gaughan, and Andy Fletcher were determined to approach their next album as a trio, with songwriting responsibilities falling solely on Gore. The outcome was A Broken Frame, arguably the most inconsistent album in Depeche Mode's catalogue. This reputation arises from the fact that Gore was tasked with producing an entire album's worth of songs, after contributing only 2 to Speak and Spell. The album presents a mixture of new compositions and songs Gore had penned as a teenager, resulting in a peculiar transitional album bridging Depeche Mode's pop origins and their darker, more mature direction. Even in 1982, Gore seemed to write with a thematic thread running through his work. The theme for A Broken Frame, the title presumably referencing their split with Clarke, appears to revolve around the trials and tribulations of adolescence, particularly focusing on the tumultuous nature of young love, notably evident from See You to A Photograph of You. These tracks form the heart of A Broken Frame, which may explain why Depeche Mode, now in hindsight, expresses dissatisfaction with the album. See You, the lead single, stands out as a strong track, but The Meaning of Love and A Photograph of You are notably lackluster. These songs, remnants of the bubblegum pop era from Speak and Spell, feel somewhat out of place on A Broken Frame, almost as if the band couldn't entirely embrace Gore's more introspective tone, clinging instead to the pop sensibilities that had initially propelled them to success. Nevertheless, Gore demonstrates his wit on Shouldn't Have Done That, which unfolds almost like a nursery rhyme. While most songs adhere to a straightforward approach, characteristic of Gore's earlier songwriting, some remain open to interpretation. The album features several standout tracks, beginning with the opener Leave in Silence, which serves as an excellent introduction to the darker sound Depeche Mode would explore further in their career. This classic track is purportedly about reaching a breaking point in a relationship or situation, although some interpret it as a veiled message directed at Vince Clarke. Legend has it that upon his departure from the band, Clarke offered them one final single to soften the blow. The other band members declined, seemingly wanting him to leave in silence, prompting Clarke to record the song with Yazoo. That song, Only You, went on to become a major hit in the UK. Nothing to Fear remains one of Depeche Mode's finest instrumental tracks, while the hidden gem, The Sun and the Rainfall, has always enjoyed a dedicated fan following. It encapsulates the struggle to salvage a relationship, making it a fitting conclusion to Leave in Silence. The fact that Depeche Mode's career didn't flounder following Clarke's departure is a testament to their resilience. This is not to diminish the contributions of the other band members, but Clarke undeniably held a leadership role within the group. The departure of such a figure would have spelled disaster for a lesser band. Yet, Depeche Mode weathered the storm, paving the way for their subsequent album, Construction Time Again. Construction Time Again marked the turning point for Depeche Mode, where everything began to fall into place. With the arrival of new member Alan Wilder replacing Vince Clarke and Martin Gore's growing confidence as a songwriter, the distinctive Depeche Mode sound began to emerge. This third album saw the band collaborate with producer Gareth Jones, who would become a long-standing collaborator. They also delved into experimenting with sampling technology, transforming everyday sounds into music, notably showcased on tracks like Pipeline, which heavily incorporates sampled industrial sounds lending the album a harder edge far removed from the poppy synths of Speak and Spell. Yet the album stands out as an anomaly in Depeche Mode's catalogue. While most of Gore's songs typically focus on themes of love, sex, relationships, and religion, Construction Time Again takes a departure, delving into social issues, a theme revisited later on Black Celebration's New Dress. Thematically, it's an outlier in Gore's career, but it's a solid album that paved the way for the band's greatest works. The album opens with the shimmering synths of Love in Itself, transitioning from the adolescent focus of A Broken Frame. It boasts a fantastic melody and ranks among Depeche Mode's stronger early singles. Following this is the peculiar More Than a Party, with its dark and sinister undertones despite its seemingly innocuous theme. Most songs on the album follow a straightforward approach, with More Than a Party being the exception. The song transitions seamlessly into the industrial clanging of Pipeline, an intriguing sequence that ties the album together. Listeners will notice Dave Gaughan's growing confidence in his vocals throughout the album. He delivers standout performances, particularly on Told You So, a track that seems perfectly suited to be a single. On Closer and Then, Gaughan showcases his most nuanced performance on the album. The track initially had many mistaking Martin Gore for the lead vocalist. And Then stands out as Construction Time Again's hidden gem. Alan Wilder contributes 2 songs to the album, 2-Minute Warning and the ecological plea The Landscape is Changing, both fitting well with the album's social theme. While Wilder might not express overwhelming pride in these tracks, they add depth to the album's thematic exploration. His contributions to the B-sides also eased the pressure on Gore after the challenges of assembling A Broken Frame. Undoubtedly, the album's enduring masterpiece is the incomparable Everything Counts, a scathing critique of big business and avarice that has become one of Depeche Mode's anthems. While it epitomizes the album's themes, it transcends Construction Time Again to become a timeless classic. Anchored by Everything Counts, the album not only showcases Depeche Mode's growth, but also established their signature use of samplers. Despite often being overshadowed by the band's later output, Construction Time Again is a significant milestone in their development and is certainly worth a listen. With Some Great Reward, Depeche Mode began to garner attention in the US. While Just Can't Get Enough had received some traction in clubs and on college radio, it was with Some Great Reward that the band landed an international hit with People Are People. Despite its simple message, it's undeniably a standout track among many on this album. Some Great Reward continued Depeche Mode's exploration of sampling and embraced a more industrial sound, all while showcasing some of Martin Gore's finest songwriting to date. Shedding their initial teeny image, the band embraced a more provocative persona with tracks like Master and Servant and Something to Do. Leather Pants replaced slacks on stage, reflecting the darker tones of the songs. The only respite from this darkness is found in It Doesn't Matter, but even its light and airy sound belies a melancholic message. The band courted controversy further with Blasphemous Rumors, a critique of religious hypocrisy that challenged the conservative attitudes of the 80s. Despite any backlash, the tracks on Some Great Reward stand as testament to their quality. The album opens with Something to Do, where Gore's boredom leads him to put on his girlfriend's dress, an act he repeated frequently on tour. Lie to Me follows, a funky track with an infectious chorus and a bass line reminiscent of Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. People Are People confronts the absurdity of racism, while Stories of Old takes a cynical view of love. Somebody, the first single featuring Gore on lead vocals, remains a poignant ballad with a touch of humor at the end. Master and Servant, a stomping dance track exploring S&M themes, became a successful single and perennial favorite. Alan Wilder's contribution, If You Want, stands out as one of his best with Depeche Mode. The album closes with Blasphemous Rumors, released as a double A-side with Somebody, challenging the notion of album closers being mere album tracks. With Some Great Reward, everything about Depeche Mode improved. Gore's songwriting was sharper, Gon's vocals more nuanced, and Wilder's presence in the studio became more pronounced as the band's sound solidified. People Are People propelled them to global recognition, but their evolution was far from over. Looking back, Some Great Reward falls just short of perfection, but in 1984, one might have hailed it as their finest work yet. It was merely a glimpse of the greatness to come, but a truly fantastic glimpse nonetheless. It's probably fair to say that around the time of 1986's Black Celebration, non-fans began calling Depeche Mode as Depressed Mood. As the albums crafted by Martin Gore grew progressively darker in tone, Black Celebration emerged as a downright bleak album. Yet, it has at times beautifully haunting darkness that elevates it to a little above OK Depeche Mode album. From start to finish, the album maintains a good flow, none of the tracks ever feeling out of place, and exudes a captivating atmosphere. Several tracks seamlessly bleed into one another, weaving a tapestry of sound that envelops and transports the listener on an interesting journey. Unlike previous releases, Black Celebration feels more cohesive, embodying the essence of an album rather than a mere collection of songs. The long-standing production partnership with Gareth Jones finally bore fruit, resulting in an album that proved practically unmarketable for Mute Records. Yet for fans, it almost fulfilled promises made as far back as Leave in Silence on a Broken Frame. The album commences with the dark yet danceable title track, urging listeners to replace thoughts of their dismal days with thoughts of intimacy. It's a standout song that arguably deserved single status. Black Celebration seamlessly transitions into the aforementioned Fly on the Windscreen, originally conceived as the B-side to the non-album single, It's Called a Heart. However, its thematic resonance with the other tracks renders it an indispensable addition to the album. Some might even argue that Fly on the Windscreen stands as the pivotal song in the track list. It certainly ranks among the bleakest of the set. The album's third track, the ballad A Question of Lust, features Gore on vocals. Gore takes the lead on 4 tracks on this album, including Sometimes, a counterpoint to Somebody, It Doesn't Matter Too, a bitter sequel to It Doesn't Matter from Some Great Reward, and The Blunt World Full of Nothing. This marked the first time Gore sang on more than 2 tracks on an album. While another lead singer might have balked at relinquishing so much territory, Dave Gahan embraced doing what was best for the album as a whole, delivering powerful performances on the remaining 7 tracks. Here Is the House, possibly the most uplifting track, explores the idea of seeking refuge from the world with a loved one. A Question of Time, a single and popular Depeche Mode track, delves into the desire to shield a young girl from harm, even acknowledging the motives of those who pose a threat. Dressed in Black subtly delves into S&M, while New Dress marks Gore's final foray into societal critique. Despite references to Princess Diana, New Dress, with its commentary on politics, media, and celebrity obsession, remains eerily relevant today. For many, the standout track on Black Celebration is the first single, Stripped. Over time, it has evolved into a classic Depeche Mode song, as all elements of the band coalesce seamlessly, from vocals to lyrics to music. The soaring synths towards the end have elicited chills on numerous occasions. It encapsulates the notion of escaping from the world and bearing oneself with a lover. Black Celebration unfolds like the score to an impending nuclear conflict where hope seems lost and solace is only found in the arms of a loved one. Undoubtedly dark and bleak, Gore simply chronicles life, and life can indeed be disheartening. The album title, Music for the Masses, was originally meant as a jest, yet it turned out to ring truer than any of Depeche Mode's members could have foreseen. In 1987 to 1988, Depeche Mode's music truly transcended into music for the masses, a reality underscored by their sold-out performance at the Pasadena Rose Bowl, marking the pinnacle of their world tour. However, sandwiched between the, in some fans' opinion, revered classic Black Celebration and the commercially successful Violator, Music for the Masses, often finds itself overlooked. Yet it shouldn't be, as it serves as the perfect bridge between these two albums. While Black Celebration lacked readily identifiable hits, well, maybe A Question of Time qualify as a hit. Music for the Masses boasted 3 hits. The album opens with one of Depeche Mode's enduring anthems, Never Let Me Down Again, a song that resonates powerfully, as evidenced by Dave Gaughan's ability to sway crowds during their 101 performance. Mute Records boss Daniel Miller aptly captured the song's impact, noting Gaughan's mesmerizing influence over the audience. Yet the song's meaning remains ambiguous. Is it about drugs, relationships, or a mere plane ride? While Black Celebration epitomized their darkest work to date and Violator soared to commercial success, Music for the Masses showcased Martin Gore's mastery of ambiguity. While his early compositions were straightforward, tracks like Never Let Me Down Again took on diverse interpretations, making Depeche Mode's music truly accessible to the masses. This trend persisted with another hit, Strangelove. Ostensibly a love song, its persistent references to pain invite contemplation. Is it a nod to S&M or an exploration of emotional anguish? Interpreted as the latter, it resonates universally, given that everyone has grappled with pain at some point. Coupled with its infectious melody, catchy chorus, and danceable rhythm, Strangelove became a club sensation with its myriad remixes. However, the album's standout track is undeniably Behind the Wheel, another composition open to interpretation, whether alluding to S&M or merely Gore allowing his partner to drive. With its driving beat and haunting synths, Behind the Wheel quickly endeared itself to fans. Notably, both Gore and Gaughan share vocal duties throughout, a combination that yields spectacular results. Other notable tracks include Nothing, a somber reflection on the absence of God, set to a danceable beat, Little 15, an organ-driven exploration of an inappropriate affair between a teenager and an adult, and Sacred, which extols love as a religion. While Little 15 saw a limited release as a single in France, Nothing or Sacred could have easily served as legitimate contenders for a 4th single. Indeed, Nothing received the remix treatment on the Strangelove 12-inch, hinting at potential single plans. Gore takes the lead on both The Things You Said and I Want You Now. The former, a typical Depeche Mode ballad, often goes unnoticed, while the latter is Gore's most straightforward composition to date. Driven by heavy breathing, grunts, and moans, it's a track best enjoyed away from parental ears or public settings. The album version pales in comparison to Alan Wilder's 1994 Exotic Tour rendition, which remains superior and yet to receive a proper release. To Have and to Hold scarcely qualifies as a song, featuring minimal music set against dark and gritty lyrics. As with I Want You Now, an enhanced version exists in the form of the Spanish Taster Mix, featured on CD and cassette editions upon release. The album culminates in Pimpf, arguably Depeche Mode's most commanding instrumental, with a title derived from the name for the youngest members of the Hitler Youth in Nazi Germany, underscoring its ominous undertones. Beyond Gore's evolving lyrical ambiguity, Music for the Masses marked a significant milestone with Gore's inclusion of guitar on select tracks, Behind the Wheel, Nothing, and B-side Pleasure Little Treasure. This marked departure from their staunch no guitars policy marked a notable shift in their musical evolution. Overall, Music for the Masses stands as a robust album, falling just shy due to the lackluster tracks I Want You Now and To Have and to Hold. These compositions somewhat disrupt the album's momentum, although they were later improved upon in subsequent attempts. However, aside from these minor blemishes, the album shines with exceptional singles and a continuation of the dark thematic tone established by preceding albums. Importantly, the songs began to resonate more widely with casual listeners, setting Depeche Mode on course for their greatest success yet. Violator was the culmination of everything Depeche Mode had been working towards since the beginning. They achieved worldwide success and sold millions of records. From start to finish, Violator is a very strong album. The singles are fantastic songs, and practically all the album tracks could be singles as well. Martin Gore's songwriting has been honed to perfection, with not only arguably the best song he has ever written, but some that come pretty damn close to that level. Dave Gahan has given some of the best vocals he has given to date, and Alan Wilder flexed his musical muscles, crafting the album's arrangements and atmospheres with the help of producer Flood to create not only Depeche Mode's most listenable album, but also its sexiest. What follows Violator's release is nothing short of world domination, not bad for, at the time, an alternative electronic band from Basildon, England. Everything comes together perfectly for Depeche Mode on Violator. This is best evidenced by Enjoy the Silence, an organ-powered ballad that turns into a stomping dance track, and Depeche Mode's most popular song ever. It's also their best. Like on Black Celebration's Stripped, everything falls together perfectly on Enjoy the Silence, but even more so because of Wilder's push to make it a dance track. It's a simple song, but very catchy. It's just a fantastic track that even non-fans will admit is good. However, if there are some people out there who have forgotten Enjoy the Silence, then they surely know the other most famous track, the guitar-driven Personal Jesus. Released as a single 6 months before the album, Personal Jesus sets the tone for the rest of the album. This was not going to be just a regular Depeche Mode album. Flood helped the band push through their rules and limitations to create something fresh and exciting, but still wholly Depeche Mode. Both Personal Jesus and Enjoy the Silence are massive singles for the band, even in America, where their record sales finally catched up to their touring success. The other two singles are no slouches in quality either. Policy of Truth is a funky track about the dangers of honesty, while World in My Eyes opens the album with a slinky, sexy vibe. I'd argue that World in My Eyes is Depeche Mode's sexiest song out there, but I'm sure fans of its B-side, Sea of Sin, would debate me on that point. It's definitely a close call. The album tracks are just as strong as the singles. Halo, which was due to be the 5th single from the album until those plans were scrapped, is a bass-driven gem accompanied by urgent synths, a fantastic chorus, and that dark sheen that all the songs on Violator seem to have. The quiet but haunting waiting for the night emerges from the darkness like a whisper, only to end with a desperate wail. Gore once again provides lead vocals on 2 tracks, the ballad Blue Dress, which revels in the simple pleasure of watching a woman dress, and The Sweetest Perfection, a song that builds to a crashing crescendo while dreaming up the perfect woman. The album Closer is the sinister-sounding but ultimately hopeful Clean, a song that carries much more weight with Depeche Mode in later years. It's a pulsing track with soaring synths throughout and the perfect closer to Violator. Violator highlights a band at the peak of their powers, and everything has been a notch below ever since. That's not to say that all future releases are horrible, they're not, but no other album quite attains the level of perfection. Black Celebration comes awfully close to matching it, but ultimately, Violator is a tighter album coming in at only 9 tracks, whereas Black Celebration has a bit of room to breathe, even with its claustrophobic atmosphere. Violator is relentless. It pummels the listener with great song after great song and sounds as fresh today as the day it was released. In all manners of the term, it is a classic. The first thing people may have thought upon seeing the video for I Feel You was, hey, I didn't know Depeche Mode got a new lead singer. They didn't. Dave Gahan, as we come to learn later, is fully into his drugged-out rock god persona and has grown his hair down to his shoulders, looks emaciated, and has got a few more tattoos. From 1993 to 1996, Gahan is teetering on the edge of a knife, but amazingly, that doesn't stop Songs of Faith and Devotion from becoming one of Depeche Mode's best. But little did they know, it would mark the end of an era and change the band forever. From the opening screech of the blues-infused I Feel You to the soaring Closer, Higher Love, Songs of Faith and Devotion deliver a worthy, if unexpected, follow-up to Violator. And while it doesn't quite reach the heights of its predecessor, SoFad, as the fans call it, does deliver 2 all-time Depeche Mode classics in Walking in My Shoes and In Your Room. Despite all their pioneering work with samplers, Songs of Faith and Devotion was the most experimental Depeche Mode album to date in the fact that the band took everything everyone knew about Depeche Mode and threw it out the window. In hindsight, that was the most logical decision. After all, what does a band do when it has already made a perfect album? Make one in the same vein that's guaranteed to disappoint? Depeche Mode has never been a band that liked to repeat itself. Some loved what the band did with the album, others hated it. What can't be denied, though, is the quality of the songs. Violator was a collection of Martin Gore's strongest songs to date, so following that up had to have been difficult. He didn't quite get there, but he came very close. As mentioned, I Feel You is an electro blues rocker that has ties to personal Jesus in that it prominently features guitars. The song was meant to shake people up, give listeners a very un-Depeche Mode sounding single to reintroduce themselves. They started this with personal Jesus, and it has continued to this day. Walking in My Shoes sounds more like the Depeche Mode people knew, but with a harder edge that carried throughout the album. It was an instant classic that succeeds on every single level. Alan Wilder really earned his paycheck on SoFad, with his multi-layered arrangements that created a dense, lush sound that was at once Depeche Mode, but a million miles away from the slick synthesizers of Violator. Walking in My Shoes is just one example of his hard work. Condemnation, along with Get Right With Me, represents Depeche Mode's flirtation with gospel music. Condemnation became famous for Gahan, citing it as his best vocal performance with Depeche Mode. It is good, but the song is just okay, while Get Right With Me is pure B-side material. Condemnation went on to become the third single for the album, with the thunderous album track Rush as its B-side. If the band was that intent on releasing Condemnation, they should have made it an all-gospel affair and relegated Get Right With Me to B-side status, which could have made room on the album for Walking in My Shoes B-side, My Joy, a far superior song to Get Right With Me. Mercy in You is a nice, underrated album track that probably should have been a single. Depeche Mode could probably fill out an entire tour set list with songs like this. Gore gives two of his best vocal performances on the haunting, string-filled One Caress and the quiet builder Judas. The album closes with Higher Love, which, like Judas, builds and builds to a soaring conclusion. However, as good as all these songs are, the best track on the album, hands down, is In Your Room. Like on Walking in My Shoes, Wilder's attention to detail is apparent. The song begins with a simple electronic pulse and transforms into a crashing epic with a slow rock beat and a fantastic chorus. The song is so dense, you'll hear something new with each listen. The song serves as a goodbye of sorts, as Songs of Faith and Devotion would be the last album Depeche Mode would release with Alan Wilder as a member. Overall, Songs of Faith and Devotion is a great album, but completely different from what Depeche Mode had been up to that point in their career. It was a gamble that paid off for them, but they suffered personally as the tour that followed it would break the band apart. Wilder left, Gore suffered seizures from drinking too much, Andy Fletcher had a nervous breakdown brought on by severe depression, and Gone was wholly consumed by his heroin addiction. This makes Sofa a bittersweet album as it's good, but it is a reminder of what had been, and nothing would ever be the same. After the success of Violator, it's safe to say that as far as the world at large is concerned, Songs of Faith and Devotion was probably the most anticipated Depeche Mode album of all time. However, for fans, the most anticipated album had to have been 1997's Ultra. At the time of the album's release, Depeche Mode was in a state of flux. Keyboardist Alan Wilder had exited the band in 1995, while lead singer Dave Gahan was recovering from a very public battle with heroin addiction. Guitarist and songwriter Martin Gore was struggling with alcoholism. He wouldn't kick the habit until at least a decade later, and keyboardist Andrew Fletcher had suffered a nervous breakdown on the previous tour. In short, Depeche Mode was not in a good place. Fans were anxious to see where the band would go next, or if there would even be a band left to go there. It's no secret that when they were a four-piece, the members of Depeche Mode all had their specific roles within the band. Gahan was the voice, Gore the songwriter, and Fletcher was kind of the band's manager and spokesman. But Wilder was the sound architect that took Gore's great songs and made them iconic. Without his, as the band put it, screwdriver work, would the new album even sound like Depeche Mode? After 12 years, could the remaining members carry on as a trio? Would Dave Gahan live through it at all? These were the questions and fears that lingered in the lead up to Ultra. Fans needn't have worried. It took them a while to get there, but when all is said and done, Depeche Mode delivered a very Depeche Mode-sounding album that is understandably cloaked in darkness and returned to a more synth-based sound, while retaining a bit of the hard edge they developed on Songs of Faith and Devotion. The lead-off track and first single, Barrel of a Gun, was a hard, down and dirty piece of electronic rock that, like Personal Jesus and I Feel You, served as an in-your-face announcement that Depeche Mode was back. It also gave no real indication of what the rest of the album would sound like. Gone commented at the time that it was the closest Depeche Mode had ever gotten to rap. Obviously, his powers of clairvoyance didn't extend to 2009 and Wrong. The song talked about living while staring down the barrel of a gun, which caused listeners to immediately point to Gone's drug problems. Gore has categorically denied writing the song for Gone. The rest of the album, produced by Tim Simonon, once again contained some good songs. The problem was that Wilder wasn't around to make them as great as they could have been. That's not to say that Ultra isn't a good album, it is, but with Wilder at the controls, it could have been up there with Violator and Black Celebration. However, of all the post-Wilder Depeche Mode albums, Ultra sounds the most like it has his fingerprints all over it. This probably stemmed from the fact that when a band works a certain way for 12 years, something rubs off. Ultra actually contains two of Depeche Mode's classic songs. The first, Home, is a big, powerful Martin Gore-sung epic. It's far and away the best track Gore has sung on even to this day. The other is the second single off the album, It's No Good, a dark, slinky, twisted love song with an amazing melody and chorus. It's Depeche Mode at their hit single best, and the Anton Corbijn-directed video is hilarious. It's No Good is probably the most Depeche Mode-sounding song on the album, which helped with its popularity. The final single was the rocker Useless, which probably is about Dave Gone. The rest of the album has a very stripped-down feel to it. The sonic layers that Wilder laid down in the past were gone, leaving the songs bare. The Love Thieves, after It's No Good, is a shimmering lounge song comparing a lover to Jesus. Gone's vocals, once ravaged by his addictions, are smooth and silky. Sister of Night is an ode to prostitutes with industrial stabs accompanying a stark and ghostly track. The cinematic Free State talks about freeing one's emotions set to one of Gore's more interesting guitar riffs, while The Bottom Line, sung by Gore, is a country-infused track about destiny. The Bottom Line, along with Home, eclipsed the high mark set by the Gore-sung tracks on Songs of Faith and Devotion, a feat that seemed impossible. The album closes with Insight, a dreamy, piano-driven song that is clearly directed at Alan Wilder with its chant of, "I'm talking to you now, the fire still burns. Whatever you do now, the world still turns." The opening lyrics also refer to a scare Gore and Wilder experienced on a plane back from the Devotional tour. It's an uplifting close to a very dark Depeche Mode album. Ultra reset Depeche Mode's status quo. It's not by far their best album, but it's a good solid album. The songs that Gore wrote were, lyrically, some of the best of his career, and Gone's resurrection told fans that the journey wasn't over yet. It's a dark and introspective album that is probably best listened to while driving around late at night or in the dark with headphones. Depeche Mode wasn't dead yet. Because Ultra was recorded under a black cloud of sorts, fans were expecting Depeche Mode's next album, Exciter, to be the big We're Back album. What they got instead was the biggest piece of wasted potential in the band's history. And this time, the only man to blame was songwriter Martin Gore. Ultra had been a dark and introspective album, and understandably so, but what emerged on Exciter was Depeche Mode Goes Mellow. The first single, Dream On, set the tone for this. The song was different for Depeche Mode, which made it a good first single release, but unlike Barrel of a Gun, it was very indicative of what was to come on the rest of the album. The lyrics on Dream On are good, but it felt like the band was trying to force a link to personal Jesus with the prevalent acoustic guitar. Though the album version goes on far too long, it's a nice song, and that goes for most of Exciter. They're all nice songs, just none of them are really that great. The best song on the album is probably the gentle, When the Body Speaks, with its lilting guitar and quiet strings on top of a throbbing electronic bass. Dave Gahan gives one of his best vocal performances on this song, which can be said of the entire album. Gahan brings his A-game, but it's Gore who comes up short this time. After building and building from a broken frame through Ultra, Martin Gore had run out of gas. Many of the songs on Exciter sound incomplete, like they're missing a verse or are suffering from the wrong type of production. These problems are painfully apparent on the 3 songs that should have been Depeche Mode epics. The first is Shine, which sounds like it needed another verse or another chorus in the song to really launch it into the stratosphere. After starting out with such promise, it just kind of peters out at the end. The lyrics are reminiscent of Stripped, but this song doesn't even come close to compare. Another is I Am You, which definitely needed another chorus to fill it out. It's a slow builder that just seems to go nowhere. On both these tracks, it sounded like Gore ran out of ideas. The biggest culprit, though, in the wasted potential race, is Free Love. Leading up to the album, Gahan compared Free Love to Enjoy the Silence, so hopes were clearly high for this one. What resulted was nothing that could ever touch the greatness of Enjoy the Silence. Free Love, while it does have a nice hook, is a slow, burbling track that screamed for the Enjoy the Silence treatment that Alan Wilder applied on Violator. The song could have been a killer dance track, but on an album of slow to mid-tempo songs, why not throw one more on there? The only saving grace is the single remix done by Violator and Songs of Faith and Devotion producer Flood. This remix appears in the video for Free Love. Gore sings on 2 tracks again, but after the highs of Songs of Faith and Devotion and Ultra, Comatose and Breathe couldn't help but be a little deflating. Comatose was described by Gore like a big, out-of-control steamboat, which fits with its bubbling synths. Breathe is a decent torch song with a lot of vibrato in Gore's vocals. The Sweetest Condition, with a nod to Violator's The Sweetest Perfection, is a suitably weird song that gets pervy enough to have its place in Depeche Mode's catalogue. The Dead of Night stands out with its campy, trashy atmosphere. I Feel Loved was the second single off of the album and targeted as the most Depeche Mode-sounding song on the album, mainly because it has a beat. It's a fun dance song, but nothing very memorable. The album closes with Goodnight Lovers, a song that Gahan described as a lullaby, but some might say that by the time they reached it in the track list, they were already asleep. The song was inexplicably released as a single, but gained new life on the Playing the Angel tour in 2005 to 2006. Exciter was Depeche Mode's most disappointing album in a long time. Gore's severe case of writer's block really hampered the proceedings. Gahan had begun writing songs, and one has to think that the album might have been a little better served by letting him contribute. The songs on Exciter aren't terrible, but they're not especially memorable either. It was an interesting experiment for Depeche Mode to make a very quiet, intimate album, but when they're only releasing an album every 4 years, it couldn't help but feel like time lost. One of the more interesting phenomena in the world of music is that when an artist puts out a fairly good album after issuing a series of okay to mediocre albums, the good album is heralded as a great album. Depeche Mode's Playing the Angel is a textbook example of this. The phrase, the band's best work since Violator, was being thrown at this album from all directions. One noticeable difference between Playing the Angel and the band's prior few albums is a considerable boost in energy. Ultra was quite dull, and Exciter only lived up to its title on 2 songs, but the Louder Than God synth line that opens Playing the Angel's lead-off track, A Pain That I'm Used To, couldn't be a more literal wake-up call if it tried. The song actually works as a sequel to Black Celebration, with its chugging beats, minor chords, and bleaker-than-bleak lyrics. "I'm not sure what I'm looking for anymore, I just know that I'm harder to console," singer Dave Gahan laments. And that's just the song's opening line. The band steps up the offensive on John the Revelator, invoking the name of the last apostle for a jumpy track with a scathing lyric that may or may not be a thinly veiled attack on a certain US president who shall go nameless. John the Revelator, he's a smooth operator. It's time we cut him down to size, take him by the hand, and put him on the stand. Let us hear his alibis. Sure, the lyric scheme itself is a little dopey, but damn, Martin Gore has grown some onions. Gore wasn't the only band member to grow a pair. Dave Gahan would only agree to do a new Depeche Mode album if he could contribute songs to it, a major act of chutzpah given that his solo album Paper Monsters was quite boring. To Gahan's credit, his songs here are good ones. Suffer Well, with its dirty guitar line, is a distant cousin of A Question of Time, but his best contribution is Nothing's Impossible, an optimistic lyric attached to a pitch-black melody. He may be saying, even the stars look brighter tonight, nothing's impossible. But the mental image the music evokes is of Gahan lying in a grave while someone shovels dirt onto his soon-to-be lifeless body. The addition of Gahan's songs to Playing the Angel made Gore step up his game as well. The Sinner in Me has an irresistible cascading melody in its chorus, followed by some gnarly guitar work and programming in the break. Gore even takes a couple lead vocals for the first time in what feels like ages on Macro and Damaged People. His voice sounds thinner than usual, perhaps because he's using his upper range. He also dips deep into the vibrato. Now let us get to the topic of the album's sound. Remember that blaring synth riff on the first track? That one that sounds like it's about to blow the speakers, even at a low volume? Well, it's just a little bit too loud. This is called a hot mixdown, where the sound pushes the needles uncomfortably far into the red. There are several other tracks on the album that sound the same way. An audio engineer student who turned in a mix like this would not pass the exam. Why on earth would Depeche Mode do such a thing? Because Alan Wilder wasn't there to stop them, that's why. Wilder was widely considered to be the band's sonic architect, and the remaining members still hadn't figured out how to sculpt the songs the way Wilder did. Here's a hint. It's the samples, guys. Sometimes it was the sound of pumping gas or a car engine firing up. Other times it was a hubcap spinning to a stop. There was always something going on in the background that made Depeche Mode's songs so unique and memorable. Heck, the catchiest part of People Are People is the first 30 seconds where the bells, electro-tambourine, and kick drums collide. Playing the Angel is a perfectly okay album, but the simple fact is that without Wilder, Depeche Mode struggled to be the band they once were, and to compare Playing the Angel to their halcyon days is both unfair and pointless. On Playing the Angel, Depeche Mode once again worked with Ben Hillier, but Sounds of the Universe is no more the sequel to Playing the Angel than Songs of Faith and Devotion was to Violator. Sounds of the Universe is a much softer album than its predecessor, but that's not to imply a lack of rockers. Playing the Angel just seemed to have a harder edge to it, and more guitar work, while Sounds of the Universe continues the move towards the more analog synthesizer sound that Depeche Mode revisited on Playing the Angel. It's sounding more retro, harkening back sonically to their earliest albums, but retaining elements of their current sound, including some solid vocals from Dave Gahan. It's a much more even album than Playing the Angel, though none of the songs on Sounds of the Universe really stand out as obvious successors to tracks like Strangelove enjoy the silence, or it's no good. This isn't a bad thing though, as the band seemed to be going for more of an album that flowed and invites people to listen to it from beginning to end. In that way, it's hard to classify the album, but at least one thing can be said for Depeche Mode: they're not boring. The album has 13 tracks, 10 by Martin Gore and 3 co-written by Gon, Andrew Philpott, and the band's touring drummer Christian Eigner and Philpott also collaborated with Gon on his Playing the Angel tracks. Gon's lyrics improved greatly since he embarked on his solo career with 2003's Paper Monsters and his vastly superior second album, Hourglass, from 2007. His 3 tracks on Sounds of the Universe are some of the best on the album. However, it's Gore who surprises with several songs that have some overtly humorous and self-aware lines in them. Depeche Mode isn't called Depressed Mood for nothing, and while their music does plumb the depths at times, it is also all in how the songs are interpreted by the listener. The album starts with the pop of an electronic device being turned on. An electronic whine builds and is added to by others, as if the band is tuning up their synthesizers prior to a performance. The hum grows and evokes memories of tracks like A Pain That I'm Used To and The Dead of Night, before cutting to a soft, stark single keyboard that sounds as if it was pulled straight off of a broken frame. Gon sings and the slow, snaking groove of In Chains finally begins. It's a decent way to open the album and is one of the best tracks on it. The song builds and builds until it finally ends the way it began, with a single synthesizer. Wrong, the first single off the album is probably the angriest song in Depeche Mode's catalogue. It has been described by Gon as less of a song and more of an assault of words. It's also known as Depeche Mode does rap. It works and is disarmingly un-Depeche Mode, which is why, of course, it was selected as the first single. Personally, I never got into Wrong. It's definitely a powerful track though, that much can't be denied, and the video is dark and haunting. There are 3 synthesizer-heavy pop songs on the album: Fragile Tension, In Sympathy, and Perfect. Fragile Tension is definitely a good track, with a guitar riff thrown in for good measure, but it feels like there's something missing that's holding it back. With In Sympathy, Depeche Mode crafts the most Depeche Mode-sounding song on the album, but at times it sounds a little bit like the glut of DM copycat bands that sprung up in the late 80s, and even today with the resurgence of electronic and new wave-sounding bands. But it seems that with this track, Depeche Mode is showing the wannabes how it's all done. The track shimmers with crystalline synthesizers and is another one that could have various meanings. Perfect is probably one of the lightest, airiest-sounding Depeche Mode songs of all time. The lyrics are great, but the effect on Gon's voice can be a little distracting, making him sound at times more like Simon Le Bon of Duran Duran than Dave Gon of Depeche Mode. The song is about alternate worlds, so you have to wonder if the band did that on purpose, putting it out there that on an alternate world, Dave Gon could be Simon Le Bon and vice versa. The otherworldly quality to his voice really hammers home the album tagline, "Songs in the Key of Space." Little Soul is possibly the most tongue-in-cheek song Gore has ever written, as the lyrics do a little comical bragging about how his little soul will leave a footprint on the universe. Not that I don't believe it, it's just funny to hear him admit it. It has a real, you just wait and see feel to it that is different for Gore, and it's very interesting to hear. That spirit continues on Peace, a song that is both uplifting and sarcastic at the same time. The lyrics "Peace Will Come to Me" may derive from the fact that Gore gave up drinking, but the braggart from Little Soul pops up again as Gon sings, "I'm going to light up the world," while also hitting the highest notes I think he's ever hit. Gore backs him up, singing, "It's meant to be, it's an inevitability." To be honest, I find it quite cheesy. I think with Little Soul, In Sympathy, and Peace, Martin is enjoying taking the piss out of people, which I think is good fun. Of Gon's 3 tracks on the album, Miles Away, The Truth Is easily the strongest, and it's one of the best songs on the album. When I first heard it, I thought for sure it was a Gore song. It's one of the better songs Gon has written for Depeche Mode, and is probably the track that Gore referred to when he said that in a blind listening test, people will be hard-pressed to tell which songs are his and which are Gon's. The track melds together guitars and synths expertly to make it something similar to Personal Jesus for the 21st century, as Gon sings about a friend who is heading down the same path of addiction he once walked himself. Gon's other tracks, Hold to Feed and Come Back, are decent tracks too, but Miles Away, The Truth Is far and away the best. Hold to Feed begins with a chunky beat that carries throughout the entire track, while Gore sings alongside Gon throughout the majority of the song. Their harmonizing has never sounded better. This is also apparent on Comeback, where both Gon and Gore are just going for it, belting out the lyrics. Speaking of the lyrics on Comeback, they are a little simplistic, and although they aren't up to par with Gore's, you have to admire Gon for wearing his heart on his sleeve. Jezebel is yet another Martin Gore ode to prostitutes, and it is the lone song on the album that Gore sings lead vocals on. It's a real lounge song along the lines of 1997's The Love Thieves, but this time with a bossa nova beat. It's a sad and haunting track, but not really my cup of tea. Finally, the album comes to a close with Corrupt, a down and dirty piece of electro rock that toys with the idea of taking advantage of a young woman. But just to make sure Depeche Mode shows their age, they only think about corrupting the young woman, showing that they've matured just enough to control themselves. Overall, Sounds of the Universe is a decent album that in flashes recalls Depeche Mode's past, but manages to push forward at the same time. It is only the lack of standout tracks that keep it from being a classic. Delta Machine represents Depeche Mode's 13th album, marking their third collaboration with producer Ben Hillier. It stands as a formidable effort, not only for a band who celebrated their 33rd year together, but also within the wider spectrum of musical acts. The album boasts a dense tapestry of styles, showcasing Depeche Mode's most experimental work since their foray into rock, with songs of faith and devotion. Evident influences from Dave Gahan and Martin Gore's solo ventures permeate the album, from the gospel soul of Soul Savers to the electronica of VCMG. These projects have undoubtedly contributed to the band's sonic expansion on Delta Machine, yielding a predominantly positive outcome despite variances in effectiveness. Similar to Sounds of the Universe, Delta Machine comprises 13 tracks, with 10 penned by Gore and 3 by Gon and his collaborator, Kurt Uenala. Gon's contributions on this occasion stood as his most accomplished up to that point. His prowess as a lyricist continues to evolve, with his tracks ranking among the album's highlights. Meanwhile, Gore's compositions traverse familiar thematic terrain of love, sex, and religion, albeit imbued with a discernible bitterness and darkness. In essence, Delta Machine emerges as the band's darkest offering since Ultra, exuding a palpable attitude throughout. Yet, akin to Sounds of the Universe, the album serves as a convergence of the band's past, present, and future, with each track possessing an air of timelessness. The album commences with Welcome to My World, evoking a mature, dramatic essence akin to World in My Eyes. Driven by pulsating synthesizers, the track culminates in an epic Depeche Mode chorus, replete with strings and soaring vocals. Angel, released alongside the band's touring announcement, presents a challenging yet ultimately rewarding sonic experience, with its competing elements yielding intrigue over time. Conversely, Heaven, The first single, akin to Condemnation from 2013, showcases electronic spiritualism but may not have been the optimal choice for an introductory single, lacking the up-tempo energy one might expect. Transitioning to Gon's contributions, Secret to the End embodies electropop sensibilities, punctuated by Gore's deft guitar work and an infectious, albeit repetitive, chorus. My Little Universe juxtaposes Depeche Mode with Radiohead, resulting in a minimalist yet captivating composition. Slow, initially unremarkable, reveals a classic blues riff that proves irresistibly catchy over subsequent listens. Gon's Broken channels a Coldplay-esque aesthetic, before culminating in a pop-infused chorus reminiscent of Some Great Reward. Gore's vocal prowess shines on The Child Inside, evoking dark imagery akin to his Counterfeit 2 era. Soft Touch, Raw Nerve emerges as a slight misstep, with Gon's vocals falling flat despite the track's inherent fun. Gon's final contribution, Should Be Higher, showcases his experimentation with falsetto, yielding mixed results that may require repeated listens for full appreciation. Alone stands as a standout track, exuding desperation underscored by haunting synths, while Soothe My Soul captivates with its unabashedly danceable, Beatles-esque chorus. The album concludes aptly with Goodbye, featuring acoustic guitar reminiscent of Personal Jesus and a chant-like outro reminiscent of electro thrash. The deluxe edition's bonus tracks maintain the album's quality, with highlights including Gore and Gon's collaboration on Long Time Lie and Gon's solo effort All That's Mine. In summary, Delta Machine stands as a testament to Depeche Mode's enduring creativity, delivering a cohesive and impactful listening experience from start to finish. While not reaching the heights of Playing the Angel, the album injects a refreshing dose of attitude into the band's extensive catalog. Depeche Mode's ability to craft such fresh material after 4 decades is truly remarkable, solidifying their status as pioneers of electronic music. With the regularity of a clock, Depeche Mode used to release albums every 4 years since Ultra emerged into the light 2 decades ago. I admire their willingness to explore new territories, even at this stage in their career when they could easily rest on their laurels. While the blueprints may be familiar, the decision to change producers injects a fresh perspective, particularly during challenging times, as evidenced by Martin's creative block during the Exciter writing sessions. Following the conclusion of the Ben Hillier trilogy, the seasoned musicians opted for James Ford to oversee their record, Spirit. Ford, renowned for his work with Arctic Monkeys and Florence and the Machine, among others, brings a distinct energy to the project. Overall, Spirit proves to be a captivating endeavor, divided into 2 main thematic and musical components. On one hand, there are the customary themes of love set against a backdrop of profound political and social awareness. While earlier works flirted with these themes, here we witness the band's boldest and most impassioned statements yet. On the other hand, musically, the album oscillates between vintage analog instrumentation and a more provocative, contemporary sound palette. Pinpointing the essence of this record proves challenging, as it draws from various eras while carving out its own unique space within the band's discography. Certain pieces could easily be lifted from Delta Machine or the mid-80s, particularly when evocative synths take center stage. So Much Love, for instance, is an uplifting number reminiscent of Soft Touch, Raw Nerve from the aforementioned album. The dynamic industrial soundscapes, coupled with Dave and Martin's vocals, inject vitality into the more subdued second half of the album. Poor Man and Cover Me also exemplify this fusion of old school and contemporary Depeche Mode. Driven by sequences, these tracks are enriched by a diverse array of embellishments, from guitar licks and brooding synth bass lines in Poor Man to the gradual progression from lush, hazy pads, echoing those of Enjoy the Silence, to krautrock-influenced grooves in Cover Me. There's a soothing tone to the latter as Gon sings of leaving this world behind to seek a new life among the stars, with the sequencer's appearance marking the transition into that dreamlike state. Departing from the often challenging arrangements of Delta Machine, the band allows the music to breathe more freely here, striking a fine balance between expansion and restraint. Contrasting this side of the album, we encounter a warmer counterpart represented by cuts such as Going Backwards, The Worst Crime, or Where's the Revolution? Bittersweet piano lines and steady drum beats instantly greet us on the opener, Going Backwards. Once again, highlights are the two members singing in unison, plus the song's progression, which becomes more urgent yet elegant. As atmosphere builds up, the main political manifesto, Where's the Revolution?, kicks in. At first, I was reluctant to admit, however, it's an okay track that conveys much with so few lyrics. The simplicity offers charm, and the duet doubles the message's power and catchiness. The Worst Crime and Poison Heart are a couple of slow numbers that bring the intimate side of Depeche Mode to the forefront. As the former reveals the mournful feel of Dave's work with Soul Savers, we are asked why haven't we done anything to make our lives better. We prefer to spread and comment on the misinformation we're fed daily without lifting a finger to improve our situations or see beyond the veil of lies. It's something we're all aware of, but many pass by it without action. Meanwhile, Poison Heart deals with relationship deterioration using an icy guitar strum and a slow, heavy drum kick accompanying it. Although Gon's songs have been gaining strength with each album, it's nice to see him collaborating again with live members Peter Gordino and Christian Einer, who are accustomed to the band's sound. Sitting somewhere in between these main styles are the two somewhat danceable numbers, Scum and You Move. Scum is a grower, with hand clapping and a distorted groove, boasting pulsating synths that complement the overall mood. Full of pathos, Dave's performance lures you in while you dance to the beat, shouting, "Pull the trigger!" The target might be Trump or Richard Spencer, the American white supremacist, yet we are given only clues. Then, You Move brings back the 80s, entwined with a modern, deep bass lead, breaking the tension in the process. In the end, Spirit needs, much like any of the band's later albums, some spins to truly reveal itself. In many ways, this is Delta Machine taken into a more organic direction, offering glimpses of past efforts in the process. The decision to let the songs breathe through airy layers was probably wise, because you can easily focus on them this way. Thankfully, taking on different political and social issues we all face today recharged them. I really appreciate how they never settle into a comfort zone. You can instantly recognize their music, yet there's always something different about it, no matter how small. Depeche Mode has long been regarded as one of the most dependable groups, seemingly capable of churning out tight records indefinitely. However, a jolt came in 2022 with the unexpected passing of founding member Andrew Fletcher. It served as a sobering reminder that as fans, we often take for granted the longevity and productivity of our favorite bands. This unfortunate event, coupled with the increasing time gap between Spirit and Memento Mori, raised concerns that we might not hear from the band again. Fortunately, the remaining members made the decision to regroup, reaffirming their status as a world-class act even after more than 4 decades in the industry. The album Memento Mori opens with My Cosmos Is Mine, their darkest tune in decades, featuring stomping beats and ominous industrial synths. It's a surprising departure, hinting at a sonic direction worth further exploration, especially given the album's overall vibe. The lyrical repetition and layered composition create a mesmerizing experience, culminating in eerie soundscapes towards the end. Another standout track is the album's closer, Speak to Me, a touching tribute to lost loved ones and a reflection on the purpose of existence. Starting from a gentle melody, it gradually builds into a sequenced coda enveloped by glacial synths, echoing the thematic and sonic motifs of My Cosmos Is Mine. Meanwhile, Ghosts Again explores mortality with a bittersweet melody, complemented by a catchy guitar lead reminiscent of their 2005 hit Precious. Despite the somber undertones, many songs on Memento Mori are surprisingly uplifting. Tracks like Wagging Tongue and My Favorite Stranger celebrate life and the bonds between people, transitioning from moody intros to steady grooves and intricate sonic layers. People Are Good harks back to the Music for the Masses era with a darker edge, while Always You infuses 80s disco vibes with haunting synths. Never Let Me Go invites listeners to dance with minimalist sequenced notes and Dave's impassioned vocals, marking a stark contrast to the album's more introspective first half. Structurally, Memento Mori follows a similar formula to Spirit, benefiting from a wider sonic palette and Martin's enhanced presence on guitar. However, the middle section of the album lacks standout tracks, though Before We Drown stands out as a potential highlight. Nevertheless, Memento Mori remains a solid addition to Depeche Mode's discography, with several tracks deserving a spot on fans' playlists. If this does indeed mark the end of their musical journey, it's a fitting conclusion. Whatever the future holds, it will undoubtedly be a welcomed bonus.